7 attendees so far. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. And thank you for organising this, Dee. Appreciate it.
Thanks for doing this for us, Lynn. We appreciate you.
It's not promotional. It's pure. We're going to get down and dirty in your mindset, okay?
All right.
Let me know when you want, if you want to start. There's 9 attendees so far. Do you want to go ahead? Your call.
I'd say give it a minute.
Okay. We're up to 12. Okay, welcome everybody. If you want to put in where you're from, please feel free to put it into the chat.
Right, we're right at 11, so we'll give it one more minute, Lynn, and then you can kick it off, and others will just join in as they're coming in.
Yep, awesome.
We want to make sure you get all your content covered.
Exactly. Ready when you are, Miss Dee.
All right, welcome everybody. This is a webinar that Lynn from Connected Strategy has graciously volunteered her time to do for our members. I'm excited to learn and hear more about what she's going to share with us today. So I just wanted to turn it over to Lynn. Lynn has been a member of DA4S for many years, and so we welcome you, Lynn, and we thank you for providing this webinar for our members today. And I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'll turn off my camera so I can be listening and taking notes at the same time.
Thank you, Dee. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Lovely to be here and to serve my fellow DA4S members. As I said to Dee a few minutes ago, this is down and dirty into mindset. There's no promotion. This is purely about mindset and what you can do to be at peak performance and strive in the pharmaceutical life science arena. So I'm going to share my slides and just double check. We had a few technical issues last time. Can you see my full view? Oops, actually it helps if I put it on proper view. Give me 1 second. My apologies. Technical difficulties, all good fun. Right, now you should be able to just see my slides. Is that correct? Benita?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, awesome. Thank you.
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. So welcome to Unlock Your Potential, Mastering Mindset and Performance in the Life Science Industry. I've been in the life science industry the whole of my life, from the laboratories right through to sales and marketing and working in medical communications and then strategy development and also coaching, which I'll come to in a little bit. What we're going to cover today is we'll really look at the psychology of success. And as I said in the billing, we're going to look at fixed versus growth mindset, because it's really important. But how do we then stay resilient while we're in action? Because so many things are coming at us all the time. We're going to help you build confidence. But more importantly, perhaps for some people, is stress management. We all get stressed at times. And then also we all don't believe we've got enough time. So we're going to look at time management. And then for specifically anybody who's had a failure, I'm sure everybody in this room has had a failure at some point, it's how you turn that into a success. And we can stay adaptable. And then I'm going to share with you some additional resources that have actually really helped me. And I actually help put out to my clients. Okay. By the end of this webinar, you should be able to enhance your performance through the mindset strategies and cognitive tools I'm going to share with you. Like I say, this is not a sales pitch. This is just pure information. And if you have any questions, we'll cover them at the end if that's okay. So we're going to help you develop a growth mindset to achieve sustained success and enjoy enhanced productivity. And I know that sounds really strange, but we've all got a number of jobs that we need to do. So how do we make sure we achieve what we want to achieve within the time frame? This is a quote by Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. I'm going to share a story about me as to why I ended up in this space. I started my company in 2012 and I was full of positivity and promise. I utilised my MBA and my kind of common sense to set up my company. Plus I had advice from accountants and lawyers, etc. And I wanted to do it squeaky clean. I wanted to do it properly. And I did. I went into one of my first pharmaceutical companies that I'd worked with previously, and they welcomed me with open arms because I'd got a really good personal reputation. So I got a job within like a couple of weeks. And then more people started using us within that same company. And then more people saw what we were doing. So they wanted to use us in the product launch space. But then, something big happened. And this can happen to so many of us. And a big event derailed me. I won't go into the details because that's not important, but it totally derailed me. It knocked my confidence, and suddenly I was being told I was no good. I did not care about my clients. I was just there to make money, and I was a sleazy salesperson. When in actual fact, all our clients in the client teams really loved us. That's why we kept getting more and more work. So I couldn't quite get this into my head, and something wasn't resonating. And the words that had been thrown at me started to trigger something in my mind, and started a limiting belief in me that I really wasn't good enough. And who was I to go out and do all this within a pharmaceutical company? Who was I? So all this started to develop into resentment of people in a similar role. And then quite frankly, I started acting like the victim. I was the victim. And the universe kind of conspires to help you. Somebody told me about a program, and it was a mindset program. And I was like, there's nothing wrong with my mind. I'm fine. I never had mentors before. What do I need one now? But I took the resistance and let it go. And I started to go to one of the programs. And at the first conference within the mindset group, I saw a huge difference because I started to understand things a little bit more. And then I signed up for the program and started working on my mindset. And you'll see in a bit why it was important. I then had the opportunity to certify as a coach before the world shut down, before the big shutdown. Something in my head was telling me I had to do this, and I couldn't really work out why, but I decided to certify. And now I get the joy of helping other people, because when I see that I can help other people transform, it feeds my heart, it feeds my soul, and it feeds my brain as well. What was happening to me, what I learned in the course was that there were two sort of states you could be in, an empowered versus a disempowered. When I'd started my company, I was in an empowered state. I was full of joy, I was empowered, I was happy, I was optimistic, all of these things. But with one act by one person, I started to spiral down into doubt, anger, hatred, guilt about myself, and I felt powerless. And that's because when your subconscious starts telling you things, it's a belief. You start to give it power. So he'd put into my head that I was no longer good enough, that I was just a sleazy salesperson, even though it was my company, my baby, and I really loved working with the people we were working with. It still went into my head, and that subconscious belief then started to appear in conscious thought, the words and the images that were behind my eyes. So the thoughts that would pop into my head was, why do I bother talking to somebody? Because I'm just a sleazy salesperson. Why should I go out and do this? But that emotion then would turn into sort of a little bit of anger and guilt, but also frustration. So my actions were accordingly. I wouldn't do the best job. I wouldn't present myself properly. And the results were that business wasn't quite booming as it had been before. Bearing in mind, previously we'd been growing at a fair rate of knots, but this derailment caused a big, huge chunk out of my business. And this is the belief feedback loop. The subconscious belief can turn into the conscious thoughts, which turn into the feelings and emotions that we have. That dictates our actions, and that will dictate our results. Sometimes it can be something that happened as a child. If you were told you would never amount to something as a child, that can stay in your subconscious for a long time. I had a person who, she went to a science fair when she was a child, and she was in a minority group, and she was really excited because she was a science geek, and she'd won the local group science fair, and she was going to a national science fair. As she went out of the door, a boy said to her, "I don't know why you're going, because you're going to lose anyway." Those words rang in her ears. And I now work with her, because when she said about going for a grant for her laboratory, I actually said to her, "Why aren't you going for your grant? You know you can do this." And it turned out that that little boy who said, "You're not going to do this anyway, you're not going to win," was still in her head. And he was stopping her and pulling her back. So we worked on that, and worked on how she could get through that. So now she's actually writing grants all the time, which is a win for her, and a win for the school, and a win for the laboratory. So you can see how powerful the mind really is. I would never have thought it. I always thought it was woo. I'm a scientist. What does mindset matter? But believe me, I'm a kind of believer now. I talked about empowered versus disempowered, and the choice really is yours. In an empowered state, you take ownership. I take ownership that I was a victim. I was a victim in what I was seeing. I was blaming. So I was in a disempowered state. I was blaming him. I was coming up with excuses. I was in denial. I had this sense of entitlement. We were doing really well. What's the problem? But what I now get to do is be accountable to myself, be responsible to myself, make the decisions. And what's key is language. Instead of using language like "I have to," "I can't," "I must," "I should," I now use "I choose," "I prefer," "I will," "I can." All of these are powerful words. And there's two different hormones. Sorry, the scientist got the better of me. There's two hormones responsible: oxytocin and cortisol. When we start getting stressed, cortisol builds up in our system. That's when you get the fight or flight, okay, that starts. And if somebody talks not quite so nice to you, or you face criticism, you can then really magnify this criticism, and you start looking at anything somebody says as an attack against you, a personal attack. And I'll be honest, that's what was happening to me. Every time somebody said something to me, whether it was nice or not, I took it as a personal attack. And cortisol stays in your system a lot longer. Oxytocin, on the other hand, is that feel-good hormone. When people say something nice to you, "So Dee, your hair was beautiful today when you just came on camera," your oxytocin levels rise and you feel good. But it doesn't last as long as cortisol, unfortunately. So I'll just have to keep telling you your hair's nice today. So that's the science behind it. So you've got your cortisol and your oxytocin, and cortisol lasts longer because oxytocin metabolizes much quicker. I've put the reference down there, and I've got a PDF if somebody wants to see it. It was a Harvard review. This brings us on to fixed and versus growth mindset. If you're in a fixed mindset, I went into that fixed mindset. I started to avoid challenges. I felt it was a little bit too hard, so I wouldn't try. I ignored feedback to some extent, and I was really threatened by the success of others. We didn't do anything wrong. Why are they getting success and we're not? And that's what happened to my mindset. Whereas if you're in a growth mindset, you embrace challenges. You can really train your brain, and you see that effort is the pathway to reward and mastery. And you can learn from feedback. But most importantly, you can see how others have succeeded, and you can be inspired by that rather than jealous. You can be inspired and see what they did to get there. So this is where the work comes in. I'd like you to take just a second for a personal reflection. Consider your current mindset, both in strengths and limitations. and think about how adopting a growth mindset perspective could really enhance your approach to challenges. Maybe you're already doing that. You already have a growth mindset. Think about how that feels when you're in a growth mindset, how it feels. Remember, excuse me, the belief, and then the thoughts, and then the emotions, and then the actions and the results. So think about what your mindset is at the moment. Is it fixed, or is it in a growth mindset? And if you're in a fixed, how can you flip into growth mindset? We can kind of cover that a little bit later. Just take a few minutes to think about which mindset you are and which one you want to be. Okay. Remember I said about taking full responsibility? Grant Cardone has the quote, take full responsibility for your success, or your non-success, as it were. And this was true for me. I really wanted to have success, but I wasn't taking responsibility for any part I might have played in what happened. To me, I took it as they'd done this to me. But to some extent, I had a responsibility for what happened as well. But of course, I couldn't see it because I'd gone into a disempowered state. So what you really have to look at is, if something happens, is it happening to you for a reason? What was your responsibility in the action? What did you do that you could maybe do different? Was it the way you said something? Was it the way you acted? Was it the way you had approached something? And I think maybe it was my approach. I honestly don't know. But you can take responsibility for your own success. When you're talking about obstacles, there are a lot of common challenges faced by life science professionals. The common challenges faced by all of us are not enough time, not enough money, and sometimes not enough employees or the right employees. That can appear to be the challenge. So often it's easy to say, I don't have enough time. I don't have enough time for that. I don't have enough time for that. But what you're doing is you're actually making sure you don't have enough time for that. If you can change your mindset to be in control and actually say, I have enough time for this, I will get done what I need to get done, and not flitting around in 10 different directions, focus on the task in hand. What do I need to achieve now? What do I need to achieve then? What are my goals? And we'll come to goal setting a little bit later on, because that's kind of one of my superpowers. But you can also visualize what you want. If you visualize more about what you want, and again, I'm going to do a visualization exercise with you, visualize what you want, you can overcome the challenges faced, because you can really think about a focus where you're, Tony Robbins says, where focus goes, energy flows. If you're focused, remember horses have blinkers. If you focus on that task, you'll get it done. And you focus. Grant Cardone calls it obsessing. Obsess about what you want and really focus on what you're trying to get to. And also stay present. What are you trying to do at this moment in time? You've written out your goals, you know where you're going, you've got your plan, but what am I focusing on this moment in time? What can I do now? What can I do in this instance? And of course, resilience. We all know of cases like Apple that was on the brink of bankruptcy in 1997. And Steve Jobs had been ousted out of Apple and then came back and got it back on its feet to what it is today. Just by one simple thing, you know, the music, I can't remember the name of it. Marvel was with the blockbusters movies of Spider-Man and Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy. They faced bankruptcy in 1996, but they got back on track. They got back into they adapted and moved slightly. So they got into the movie making business, and they actually started to soar and make more money. So let's think about some of the people in science What do you think about, Marie Curie or some of the wonderful scientists that have come through and making discoveries in pharmaceuticals or medical devices? All the time, they're contributing to science. And maybe, I mean, when I was at school, I was told I would never amount to anything in biology. At that time, it didn't hit me the way it could have done. In actual fact, it had an adverse reaction because she told me I couldn't be anything in biology. I was determined I was going to be something in biology. My degree is biology, and I've worked in biology the whole of my life. But some people get told something and they just take it as a hit. You can always bounce back by thinking, what do I want? And how am I going to get that? And that's where you bounce back from adversity. If something happens like it happened to me, think about what lessons it's teaching you. I was talking to somebody the other day and he said, lessons like that are sometimes a way of saying to you, watch out, be warned that you're kind of getting, maybe I was getting a little bit too ambitious. Maybe I was not taking much care of my clients. I honestly don't know what the situation was, but it stopped me in my tracks and made me really consider who my clients were, what service I was providing to them, and whether I was providing the right service. We were getting all the signs that we were, but you never know. So it made me stop in my tracks and look. And that's what sometimes you need, a lesson from something that you don't quite prefer. One of the things that I love doing is goal setting. Because if you're very crystal clear on your goals, and most pharmaceutical companies, we work with companies on strategy and pre-launch strategy. So we work with them on their goals and then right down to the tactics. But that works for goal setting in your personal life or your career. I don't know if anybody filled the Wheel of Life out on our website, because that looks at the specific categories that you might want to, it does a gap analysis in effect. I'm here and I want to go there. And it looks at the gaps so that you can see which part of your life you actually want to work on the most. But if you have really clear goals, crystal clear, down to the detail, and I run a workshop on goal setting, including the GHOST framework and SMART framework. We haven't got time enough to cover it here, but goal setting is really clear. Every morning, I write down my goals, every single morning. And if I'm going through a phase, what I call a wobble phase, where my mind has distracted me, it's put me into procrastination mode, or I don't want to do something, I then look at my goals and I write them down again, because by getting crystal clear on your goals, it gives you motivation to stay focused. I'm doing this because I want to get there. I want to achieve this. Okay, we're going to do a visualization exercise. This is going to sound really weird at the moment, and I won't be able to see you all doing it, and you're going to be able to see me and laugh at me. So what I'm going to do, I want you to stretch your arm out and point towards the camera. Then I want you to turn your arm as far behind you as you possibly can get. Okay, turn your arm as far behind you as you possibly can get. Then bring it back. Then I want you to put your arm down and imagine that your arm is coming up, it's pointing at the screen, and it's going as far back behind you as you possibly can. And push it that a little bit further. In your mind, push it that little bit further. Stop, bring your arm back, pick your arm up again, point in imagination, visualizing, pick your arm up, take it behind you as far as you can go, push it even further, that little bit further, and then bring your arm back. Right. Think about how far your arm could go in your mind's eye. Now let's do it again in reality. Pick up your arm, turn it back, and see how far you can get. Can you all get a little bit further? Because you saw in your visualization in your mind's eye that you could actually get a little bit further. This is where your reticular activating system comes in. You know, when you do a Google search and you say, I want all the red cars in the world, it'll show you red cars of any description. It's probably a bad example, but if you tell it, I want pink cars, it'll bring pink cars back. The reticular activated system says the same thing. If you've ever looked for a particular make or model of a car, a pink Nissan, for example, or red Nissan, for example, and you've obsessed about this car and you've seen it in your dreams and you've imagined yourself driving it and you've imagined being in that car and your past partner's next to you and the kids are behind you squabbling, but you've imagined yourself in that car even before you bought it. And then suddenly you start seeing red Nissans everywhere you go and you're like, I didn't know there were that many Nissans in this place. But it seems like every other car is a red Nissan. You're kind of like, that's your reticular activating system again, because it doesn't know the difference between truth and non-truth. There was a Harvard business study where they actually asked pianists to play the piano and they monitored sections in their brain. They asked them to play the piano, monitored the sections, and then they asked them to pretend they were playing the piano. And the same areas lit up. So if you tell your brain, this is what I want, so when you're writing out your goals and you're visualizing that success, as you're writing out your goals, see them, feel them, touch them, smell them, whatever it is you're looking for. If it's the most beautiful garden in the world, feel the flowers, smell the scent, see the beauty, see the widespread beauty that you created. And that will help you find what you need. The universe has a way of conspiring. Don't know if you've ever thought of this, but you're thinking about a friend or your other half, and all of a sudden the phone goes and it's that friend or the other half, and you're like, how did that happen? I was just thinking about them. It's your reticular activating system. It conspires to help you find what you actually want. And that's where you bring in visualization into what you're actually looking for when you're setting your goals, so that you can achieve success, whether that's a career goal or whether that's a business goal or whether it's a personal goal. Visualize out what exactly you want to look and be very, very detailed. The more detailed you are, the better it is. Conscious of time here. When we're building confidence, as you saw, once I lost my confidence, it knocked me for six. Once I lost my confidence, I stopped behaving well. I was just angry all the time. I would avoid situations, but when I started to get my confidence back, that's when I started to really see how mindset affects what we do and also how other people perceive us. I was talking to myself more nicely, and I was also talking to others more nicely. Remember that oxytocin versus I can't remember oxytocin. Anyway, remember that slide. It's how you talk to people as well as to how they will feel. If I talk to people nicely, they're going to feel good. But if I'm grumpy and I'm really angry, they don't know why I'm angry. They just think she's a grumpy old person. So think about how you can show that you're in a good mindset and that you really appreciate people and talk to people nicely. But most importantly, talk to yourself nicely. This is a tool we use to help you if you're having one of those feelings. The most well-known limiting belief is I'm not good enough. Even Tony Robbins, before he goes on stage, he has a power move and it's like, yes. Excuse me. It's his power move to get him into that phase. You can do a stance that makes you feel powerful. But what you need to do is think about the opposite. So if something's coming into your head at that minute, so I'm not good enough, excuse me, I'm not good enough, think about what the opposite is, because really I'm not good enough. It's not true. So what's the opposite? My coach says cancel the bad thought and put in the new thought. I am good enough and I've always been good enough. And then what you do is start stacking the evidence. Remember that reticular activating system? It's looking for evidence. So you start looking at the evidence because your brain will tell you exactly, it will show you the evidence for whatever you're actually feeling. So if you're feeling not good enough, it will start stacking the evidence to show that you're not good enough. Well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that and you didn't do the other and you messed that up. Okay. But if you say, I am good enough and I've always been good enough, and then you start really thinking about, I've always had senior positions, I've always had good reports from my peers, in my case, launched my own business successfully, or for other entrepreneurs on this call, think about the evidence and you'll find that once you start writing out, your brain will find you evidence for why you actually are good enough, or why there really is enough time to get things done, because the other one is time, which we've already talked about. And you can really see how time, you can actually believe that you do have enough time, because you can suddenly find that you actually have achieved more in your day than you thought you were going to. And one of the other things, tips for when you have not enough time or your brain is trying to sabotage you, I just sit at my desk, and if I'm feeling a little bit odd, and my brain's saying, right, you need to stop now, I've got to eat dinner, or I've got to do something else, I sit at my desk and I say to myself, just do one more thing. And then just do one more thing. And just do one more thing. And before I know it, I've done 5 things that I wouldn't have done if I'd let my brain take the better of me and either, distract me on the phone or whatever I was looking at. So you can use that just one more thing. When you're changing your limiting belief to a new decision, and it really is that simple, we often get questions to say, is it really that simple as making a new decision? It is. There's a short answer, it is, and there's a long answer that it can take a little bit of time, because your neurons have been built up in such a way that that limiting belief has taken hold. It's like a little part of your brain has been squished by this limiting belief. And what you're trying to do now is you're trying to get rid of that and replace it with new. And you're trying to neurosculpt and pull into it new neurons, new thinking, new ideas. It's just like when you're growing up as a child, you're constantly neurosculpting, because as you're learning more and you're taking more in, you're neurosculpting. Doesn't mean to say you can't do that as an adult. What you do is you change your decision. It's a simple decision, and then you work every day to get that new decision into your head. It might be by a mantra. It might be just saying, every time you notice that bad decision coming into your head, nope, stop, cancel, and bring in the new decision. And it will take time. You'll notice that you have to do that less and less and less until that new decision takes over, and that you are that happy person, you are that confident person again. So, or if something's happened, you can kind of get over it. A big thing is stress management. And I think anybody who was at DA4S last year in this East Coast conference would have heard about the box breathing technique. So you breathe in for 4 seconds through your nose, you hold for 4 seconds, and you breathe out for 4 seconds through your mouth, and you hold for 4 seconds. And you can do that 3 times. If something happens and your immediate reaction is like, use the stress management impact, the box breathing method. This is used by police forces and armies, etc., across the world, because as they're going into high conflict situations, they need their nervous system to be really calm and controlled. So they use the box breathing methodology to calm everything right down, and that's what we can do. Okay. I've talked about time management, but one of the tools and techniques you can use is time blocking. And I'm going to be really quick on this. If you have, for an entrepreneur, it might be proposal writing, or it might be callbacks to clients, or it might be client service, customer service. If you're in a corporate environment, it might be that you've got a specific slide set to do for your boss, or you've got to write a clinical paper. Block that time out. Turn your phone off, turn your email off, and just focus. Set aside that time and focus, and then time block throughout the week. I've got this to do. I'm going to set this aside a time all day during the week, every day. So 9 till 10, I'm going to be doing this activity. Nobody bother me. I'm just going to focus. And that way you'll get done what you need to get done within the right amount of time. And of course, if you've had some failure, let's turn it back into success, because it's a learning opportunity. Like one of my friends said to me, what happened was something that made you stop and look and reevaluate things. And that's exactly the way I look at it now. I learned from it. I learned a lot of lessons. And now every time something happens, it's a challenge, but it's something I need to find a solution. I can find a solution for. See the change in wording? I can find a solution for, and then I can move forward. Now, we all know that we have to stay adaptable, because there's so many different things happening in our industry. There are so many different things happening, both as an entrepreneur and on the corporate side. So we have to work and see how we can remain relevant and competitive through adapting and changing to what we need to do. So if we need to get up to speed in a different therapeutic area, then we get up to speed in different therapeutic area. Whatever we need to do to make sure we're adding value to our internal team or our external team. If it's corporate, it's our internal team and to our customers. If it's an entrepreneur, it's internal team and our customers, just the same. How are we keeping up to date with what's happening so that they can see that we are up to date? I saw this today, it popped up on my Facebook feed, and I thought it was so relevant. Your mind will always believe everything you tell it, feel it, feed it hope, feed it truth, and feed it with love. These are some of the books that I read. The Donkey Principle is a really interesting way, especially if you've got adolescents or children. It's a really good way of looking at mindset, but from a donkey's point of view. She has 2 donkeys that are rescue donkeys, and she goes through why a donkey, when you say they're stubborn, they're not actually stubborn, they're just assessing the situation. The Big Leap is all about finding your genius zone. I decided my genius zone is that I can help people get really clear on their goals, because I do it in product launch, but I also do it in their professional life. The who, not how, is thinking, I can't do this, but who could help me? Then the Mountain is You is about self-sabotage. When I heard this book over audio, I was thinking, is she talking directly to me? Is she in my back door? Is she watching me? All these resources are there to help you. And if you want any other examples, just let me know. I want to thank you for your time. And it was really great presenting. I'm sorry, I maybe gone over a little bit of time, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box or put them in the chat.
Just wanted to say thank you, Lynn. That was some good, insightful information. I know I'm personally working on the time management piece, so I think most of us can definitely benefit from that. But thank you for your time and the insight. I'll turn it back over to you and for the Q&A. And I can assure you folks are going to ask if you're going to be sharing any portion of this deck today. So maybe you can address that.
Absolutely, Dee. Thank you, Dee. If people want a recording, we'll send you an email with asking you if you would like to have the recording. We'll send an email out after this meeting, and if you'd like a recording, we can send you a recording. I'll just need to tidy it up a little bit, but you know, we'd be happy to send you the recording. But if you want to know any more, just reach out. It's a 15-minute chat just to reach out. If you've got questions, if you want to have more information, please feel free to contact me. I'm here to help and support people like I was helped and supported when I needed it. And that took a lot for me to say what I had to say today, because it still has an element of deep wound, but I am still getting through it. It's amazing how something can derail you. And as women, particularly, and I'm not saying men don't, but I know as a woman in corporate, something would come across my desk, and the story I would make up in my head would then be derailing for either an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, who knows how long. And that's what I want to help people do, is stop that. And you can do that very easily by, just as I said, this is come across my desk and I've made this story. That's not true. I'm going to change it to this. It's either I'm just going to look at the facts, or I'm going to wait to see what happened. But at least it stops you from going into that story and going down the rabbit hole. Anybody have any questions? Let me see if there's any chat. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat. Like I said, the most often one we get is it really that easy to do, to change your mindset? And the answer is yes and no. Depends how big and how deep that limiting belief goes. And often there are layers. It's a bit like an onion. You peel back one layer and then you sort of find another one underneath. You're like, And you peel that one back and then there's another one. Depends on the gravity of the challenge that you're facing. But it can be very simple, and it can be turned around very, very quickly. Like I say, just think, nope, cancel, and change it, and then start to stack the evidence. So you can all do that. This is training you to do your own mindset, your own mindset work, if you want to. Does anybody else have any questions? I was trying to make sure I didn't go too far in time. Can you talk about limiting beliefs in a changing world, e.g. AI? Interesting, Lynn. Yes. There's a lot of thought about AI going to be taking over the world. When I was out in the field selling pharmaceuticals for the companies I was working with, where they said that when things started going online, it was going to be the death of the sales rep. I think it's important to remember that we're all human and we all want human interaction. And if you can think about, if your limiting belief is AI is going to take over the world, or AI is going to take over my job, just try and stop and think what the opposite is. The opposite is AI is a tool, just like some of the tools I've shown you. I admit I use ChatGPT sometimes, but I've trained it now to kind of bring my voice out, but I always double check things. Always, because it needs that human touch. So if you think it's just another tool, and then you start stacking the evidence to what other tools you use. So before mobile phones came out, nobody knew how useful they were going to be. AI has its place just like everybody else. Now, Lynn, did that answer your question? I hope so. Any other questions? Thank you, Lynn. Yeah. Any other questions? The mindset is a really funny thing. Suggestions for boosting confidence? Absolutely. If you have your goals very, very clearly written out, and you know how you're going to achieve them. So it's goals, objectives, strategies, tactics, tasks. How am I going to achieve these? Okay. And this is not a sales call, but you can see I can help you with the goal setting. But what you can do is when you get crystal clear on your goals and the how, your confidence develops much more, because you know how you're going to do something. Half of the fact of confidence is not knowing how I'm going to do something. And so you're not sure how to approach something, how to do something. But if you can, if you can put into your head that rather than I'm not a confident person, remember, this is the limiting belief, I'm not a confident person. What's the opposite of that? I am a very confident person. And then you start stacking the evidence as to where you actually have been confident, even if it's just ordering something at a restaurant or sending something back at a restaurant because it wasn't cooked properly. That's confidence. So you start stacking the evidence as to when you were actually, you've been shown levels of confidence, and you keep stacking that evidence. There's also, you can use incantations. You can use an incantation that you can say every morning to yourself. I am bold, I am brave. I'm here to serve this world. I'm just making these up. I'm bold, I am brave, I'm here to serve this world, and I'm here to change this or do what. And if you start saying that to yourself every morning, remember your reticular activating system doesn't know the difference between truth and non-truth. And it will start saying, oh, you're actually more confident. I'm sure a lot of people, after the shutdown, I know it affected me. My husband was quite surprised. We went to a networking event and I was kind of like really timid. And he was looking at me going, what is wrong with you? And I had no idea. I just suddenly found that I'd lost my voice. I couldn't talk to people. I didn't know how to talk to people. But it was pointed out to me and I was like, okay. So then I started saying to myself, actually, I am a confident person and I love talking to people, which is true. I love talking to people. I love hearing about other people. And then that started stacking the evidence. I was like, okay, the truth is I actually am good at networking. I am good at talking to people. And I started stacking that evidence. And then I started to become even more successful because I was talking more and going out to speak to people more and being more confident. It builds momentum. The more you do, the more you get to do. Remember physics with your momentum. Once you start, what do they say? A body in motion stays in motion. Just like that, if you start doing something, it will increase as you go along. Just keep doing more of it and keep pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. This brain, not just mine, is a mammalian brain from years ago. And it was about keeping us safe. That's your fight, flight, or freeze. When you start getting out of your comfort zone, and you could call it lack of confidence, but it actually isn't. When you start getting out of your comfort zone, it actually starts to say, whoa, hold. I want to keep you safe. Stop doing that. It's not good. The most successful people push through that uncomfortableness. Tony Robbins talks about it. Dean Graziosi talks about it. Grant Cardone talks about it. Push out of that uncomfortableness. And that will improve your confidence and it will improve your success. Because the more you can push and be out of I always like saying, think outside the box. But I don't just think outside the box, I push the box. I'm always pushing the boundaries. Deal probably attests to that. I'm always pushing boundaries. But you have to go out of your uncomfortableness to try and get better, improve, do what you want to do. Because if you've visualized what you want and how to get there, then your brain will help you do that. Thank you for the question. Any other questions? Because we've still got about 10 minutes left. And if I didn't answer any question, please tell me. And I'll re-answer the question. But just back to the resources. These are really good resources. And this one is actually very funny. The Donkey Principle is actually a really good, funny book. But it relates to mindset in such a different way. The Mountain is You is all about sabotaging and how your brain sabotages you, just like I said, because it's a mammalian brain that's donkey's years old in terms of its structure and content, and it will try and hold you back at all times. Sorry, there's just a question coming about, yes. So somebody said another book on similar principles about the mind and neuroplasticity is Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess by Dr. Caroline Leaf. Thank you for the suggestion. There are a number of good things out there. When I worked for Pfizer, when I was in medical communications, we actually had a neuroplasticity group. And it was an advisory board of the key top neuroplasticity or pain specialists in the world. And they talked about how your brain can understand and be affected by smell. A smell can determine your level of pain. And I know that sounds really odd, but it can determine your level of pain and it can bring pain about. Just as if you're in a situation, and we're talking about triggers here, a limiting belief that you thought was way gone, but somebody says something and it triggers it in your head. It's your brain, the neuroplasticity, the neurons of your brain triggering, but you can change that thought. Once you've clocked it, once you've decided, okay, I see you, I hear you, you're not escaping, then you can change your brain and change the neurons in your head. Sometimes it's going to be easy and overnight, and sometimes it's going to be a little bit longer. Just depends how deep something goes. Any other questions? I was thinking of some of the more common questions that I get. And one of the things that I sometimes come across is people think that mindset work is because there's something wrong with you. That's exactly the opposite. Everybody at some point has felt that I'm not good enough. Everybody has, whether it's affected you or not, at the time, we've all felt it. And so it's more about how you react to certain things based on what happened when you were a child. And it's nothing to do with the fact that there's something wrong with you mentally. It's just the way the brain is. It's out to self-sabotage you. Read that book about The Mountain Is You. It's all about designing to self-sabotage all the time, because in Ice Age time, if you didn't conform to the group, you would be thrown out. You would likely die, or I think there were saber-toothed tigers, freeze to death, sorry, and I think there were saber-toothed tigers around there. I don't know many saber-toothed tigers around Georgia, but your brain still thinks the same. In that, if you were ostracized from the group, you were likely to die. And your brain is still in that kind of feeling. So that's why your brain, there's nothing wrong with you mentally. It doesn't mean to say there's something wrong with you. It just means you're normal. We all have sometimes what I call again a wobble moment. You go to do something, you're like, can I do that? Not so sure. Or you're about to go on stage, or you're about to present, and you just have to sit for a minute and ground yourself because you're thinking, ooh, people are watching me. And that's another quick tip. When you're presenting, don't think about you, think about your audience. Because you might fluff up. I fluffed up today. You might not even have noticed, or you might have noticed and just thought I'm human. But I was trying to make sure, I'm trying to make sure I can serve you and give you the information. I thought very carefully about being in life science myself and what I would like to know, and some of the tools and techniques I've used myself. In fact, every tool or technique that I've shown you, I've used myself. And it's about thinking about what your audience need and what your audience want to get out of this. So I hope I've given you what you need. I hope I've given you what you were looking for. But again, I'm open to having any more conversations, and here are the additional resources again. Okay, Dee, do you want to give everybody kind of 7 minutes back if there are no more questions?
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you for all the good questions too. Appreciate it. And I'll allow you to just to follow up with those who would like a copy of your presentation and who you'd like to share that with. Defer that over to you. Thank you for your time. And I appreciate everybody today for joining us and supporting Lynn and her webinar series. So thank you.
Thank you, Dee. And I look forward to, if there are any questions, if you think of any questions afterwards, please let me know. Okay. Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.